Okay, hello everybody and welcome. Mike Butler here, and for today's training session, I've got a very special guest, a great friend and mentor of mine. His name is John Schaub, and that's spelled Schaub. And the reason I spell that is because I get so many folks, and I know John has put up with this his whole life probably. They'll say Schwab, they'll say all kinds of different versions of it, but it's Schaub, just Schaub. And he's going to be on here today, and I'm looking through list on a little control panel, making sure everything is fine, and it looks pretty good. Let me see what you see, if you're getting to see everything fine. Okay, I got to do some checks and balances here, John. But cool. Dashboard, we got that. And let's see, am I having a brain fart on anything? I don't think so. Okay. So, all right, John. Hello, and how are you down there in happy sunny Florida? Or are you getting hit with that storm?
Nah, well, the storm's supposed to show up here sometime later this week, but I think it's going to miss us, and we're pretty well set up for rain down here. It rains every day, so it should be a non-event. We like rain.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. That's in your DNA, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we get 60 or 70 inches a year. We get 18 inches a day sometimes. So it's, we live on the water, which is a nice thing. The water runs right back into the bay, and so as long as we don't get really high tides with the rain, we're okay.
Okay. Well, we're going to jump right into it here, and I got a couple of questions for you, John, to get started. But let's begin with a little bit about you, John. Can you share like what you do today as a successful real estate investor, your lifestyle, family, travel, vacations, etc., and compare that to how much time you spend on your business today versus maybe when you got started?
Yeah. Well, I've been buying property for about 40 years now, since the 70s. I got out of college in the early 70s and then got into the business pretty fast after that. Bought my first house in 1973 that I still own. And so I'm not buying as aggressively today, but over that entire period of time, 40 years, I've only bought about 150 properties. So that, I know that sounds like a lot if somebody's just getting started, but if you divide it by 40, it's really only about 4 properties a year. So I'm not a full-time buyer where I'm buying 2 or 3 a week. I bought 2 last year, so I generally buy 2 or 3 a year, and I manage all my own properties, and we do that with the internet and with our touch cell phones. We were able to do that. We've automated a lot of stuff, and it's not a big problem to me. But I do travel a lot. I think you know that. My daughter lives in Australia, so we spent the month of July over there, and we're going back over there.
How long now?
Later this year.
How long did you say? A month.
We were there for about a month. And we'll go back for another month. So you can do it, and I'm down to about 30 properties, 30 tenants now. So you can manage that remotely. And as you well know, you're a great manager. So we just have systems set up that people email me. They don't call me. And I have good folks that have been working for me for years. And I don't have any full-time employees. I do everything with contractors. But I have great contractors, plumbers, electricians, AC guys. They respond quickly. They get things fixed. So we're in good shape that way. So I probably, to answer your question about how many hours a week do I work, I hate really to say something like that, but it's not that many. There's days you don't have anything you do, and then there's other days that it seems like you get 4 or 5 things going on. It comes in spurts. I was kidding the other day. It seems like it's Friday afternoon about 5:30 is when it generally gets busy. You can go 4 days without a phone call. Then Friday afternoon, people decide to call you.
Boy, ain't that the truth? Yes,
it's funny about that, but that seems to be the way it works. But I as you know, I like to write. I like to teach. I only teach 2 or 3 times a year, but I like it. But most of our travel now is for pleasure and seeing kids and that kind of stuff.
So you said you did a month in Australia, and your daughter lives there, right?
Right.
And in fact, I'm showing everybody a picture of you right now standing in front of Churchill Downs. It looks like it might be in the winter circle. Is that the one that your daughter took of you when you got a media pass to eat free hot dogs?
That could be, yeah. I was up in the Queen's box eating hot dogs. That was a wonderful day.
Okay.
I didn't realize they gave you free stuff if you had a media pass.
Yeah. And so what happened one year, guys, is that his daughter in a photography apprenticeship maybe or something like that. Is that right? Or was she hired?
Yeah, she was working for a guy who was shooting the Derby. He took 4 interns up there. She was one of them. And they were all monitoring cameras there on the track. They were on the track taking pictures. It was pretty exciting. It was fun.
Wow. That's great. And you said you took a month off and went to Australia. Now, is that just like a one-time thing, or is this something that you do several times a year or every year? I'm just looking for
my daughter lives over there. Yeah, daughter lives over there, so I'm going to be over there at least 2 or 3 times a year, I'm sure. If you're going all the way to Australia, you don't want to go for a weekend. You have to plan it, but we generally try to leave after the first of the month, after we get the rent in the bank, and get back right before the end of the month. So we put the rent in the bank again. So that gives us about 30 days that we can travel, and I can handle everything else remotely. But we like to be here when the money comes in. People do pay by check. A couple people pay by cash, but almost everybody pays by check or direct deposit now. So it's getting even more. That's more automated.
No, that is awesome. So how do you, without getting into a boatload of details and a lot of time, if you're in Australia for a month, how do you run your business back home? Can you share with us like the technology? And I know you're a tech tard, okay, but how does John Schaub, the 40-year investor who hates computers and all that kind of stuff, how does he run his business from Australia probably with his smartphone, right?
Yeah, I don't hate computers. They just don't like me. It's one of these one-way things. I like computers. They just don't do the things they're supposed to sometimes. So I had all we switched all our tenants over to email here a few years ago, and that made a big difference. I won't let them call me. If they call me and get my phone number, it says email me. That doesn't say leave a message. It says email me. I want them to write it down. And by having a written record, that helps me. And it's pretty amazing what tenants will tell you if they start typing, and you can see how literate they are, too. It's pretty interesting. But when they email me, then I can respond. I can figure out who to call or who to email back if I'm getting hold of one of my contractors to send a plumber out or AC guy out, and we can have a problem scheduled to be fixed before I email them back. So that makes them happy. What a tenant's looking for is some kind of response. And if I say, well, the guy will be there first thing in the morning, or whatever the answer is, that make they can live with a problem overnight. They don't have to have it fixed in 15 minutes, but they want to know what's going to get fixed.
That's awesome.
So by doing everything on email, it's just and I check my email a couple times a day. I don't check it every 5 minutes, but I check it a couple times a day. And the challenge about Australia is we're 14-hour time difference. So it's the communication by telephone would be difficult anyway.
So if I call you or email you, we're actually emailing tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and if you call me right now, it'll say email John. It doesn't say leave a message. It says email John.
Okay. Well, here's what's really cool about that I want to share, and just to let everybody on the call know, when John gets these folks to communicate by email, he gets a date and time stamp, and he gets their message in their own words. So there's none of this like writing it down on a voice message pad you buy from Office Depot. So the documentation and the wording is exactly as they sent it to you. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Let's move on to the next one then. Okay. When you got started, how much time did you spend on your real estate business?
All of it. I was excited. I started when I was pretty young in my 20s, and I had no money, so I needed to be excited about something. And I was always out, walking the streets, talking to people, talking to realtors, finding deals. And early on, I learned to deal with investors and found some guys in my town who had a little bit of money. And I say a little bit, it wasn't a lot. We put together deals with $2,000 or $3,000 down, but I didn't have that, so I'd have to go out and find that $2,000 or $3,000. And we bought a lot of property, a lot of stuff I wish I hadn't bought, but it was all educational. We bought a bunch of duplexes, a bunch of low-end houses, apartment buildings, motels, some commercial stuff, a little bit of everything. And then I got where I learned a little bit about the house business by buying a few houses, and decided that was a lot easier, a lot less time-intensive to manage than a motel or apartment building or commercial building. So we switched over to houses back in the 70s, and I've been teaching people how to do that ever since, and it's really worked well for me. It just suits me. And we're all different. If you want to be Donald Trump, then you have to go out and buy a big building someplace. But if you just want to have an income stream that you can live pretty comfortably on, you can go out and buy a dozen houses and get them paid for, and live pretty darn well with that kind of income.
That's awesome. What lit your fuse on the single-family housing investing versus all those other things?
Well, it was just the amount of management. I had found that my house tenants tend to stay longer. They didn't move in and out as fast, and they tended to take better care of the property, and they tended to pay better. If you ever own an apartment building and you're chasing young apartment tenants all the time for the rent, and they're always breaking things, and they don't stay very long, it's just a very management-intensive job to run an apartment building. But the houses attracted different folks. They attracted people that had kids and pets, and they didn't want to move. They wanted to stay for a while. So my average tenancy went from maybe 8 months in the apartment building business up to just a couple of years really fast. And now today, because I've really fine-tuned it, our average tenant stays someplace between 5 and 10 years. It's probably 7 or 8 years right now. But, like you, I've got a lot of long-term people. I have people who stay with me 15 or 20 years. I've got a dozen of them that have been with me 10 years, I know. And that really makes life easy, because it's like having a long-term employee that you know them, you trust them. We like each other. They like my house, I like them. It's a win-win deal for sure. And it makes it a lot easier to manage.
That's awesome. You've got a book out that's the second edition. It's called Building Wealth One House at a Time, and I'm showing everybody that on the webinar right now. And the first book let me say this: the first edition had the same title.
It did. Same title, different book, though. I've rewritten it because a lot of things happened since 2006 when that first book was published. So the next 10 years were pretty interesting. And I learned a lot, and so I updated that book. I did a total rewrite of it. A lot of the good stuff I left in. I just cleaned it up a little bit. But I think this book will, again, be bestseller like the last one was. It's just a great book to get people started in the right direction and teach them, an ethical way to invest in real estate, where you don't have people mad at you. I've been in the same town, in the same office for an awful long time, in the same house for 35 years. So, people know where I live. They know who I am. I don't hide. So we just run a business that's fun to run. And, it helps people. When I buy a house from somebody, I help them. When I rent a house to somebody, I help them. When I sell a house to somebody, I'm helping them. So there's no bad news if you do it right. And it's a great business, a very lucrative business, but you just have to learn the basics. And, that's why I write and teach, is to help people with the basics.
That's awesome. Inside the first page here, John called me up a while back and asked me to write up a little endorsement. And lo and behold, as you can see it right there on your screen, he put it on the first page inside his book. And here's what I wrote: John Schaub is the Pope for real estate investors. Genuine, sincere, no hype, no BS, and his methods and strategies are simple. They're proven, and they work in all markets. My best mentor ever. And I want to thank you for that invitation and allowing me to endorse you and your book on there. That's an honor and a privilege that, I call that one of those Lifetime Achievement Awards. So thank you, John.
Well, you're certainly welcome. You've been a great friend, and you've helped a lot of people, too. I'm very proud of all the work you've done, and I'm honored to have you endorse it. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you, John. And he also sent me, and this was a fluke, there's a story behind it, we just don't have time to get in it, but he sent me an autographed copy of his book when it came out, and that just gives you a good, warm, fuzzy feeling inside, and that's kind of neat, and thank you again for that, John. And now I've got your mug up here. I'm going to go back to the Churchill Downs picture, and we'll move forward then. I've got my phone just timed out. Okay. When did you start teaching, and why? Why not focus on investing 100%? I hear that from a lot of folks. Well, if he's so successful in investing, why in the world is he teaching?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I teach about 3 classes a year, and I've been doing that since 1982. I've never taught every weekend or anything. When I first started to teach, my buddy Jack Miller and I got together, and we did it just for fun, and we taught a class, and a bunch of people showed up, and they clapped, and everybody had a good time. So, if you've ever been in show business, ever stood up in front of an audience and had people clap and be happy with you, that's a good feeling. And I do believe we help people. I've had a lot of folks come through the seminars over the years, and a lot of people have gone on to do some pretty spectacular things. So it's been fun to stay in touch with them, fun to watch them. And I think writing and teaching, if you are actually in the business, and obviously I am, it helps you think through how you operate your business. And it puts some pressure on you to do things right. If I stand up in front of a crowd and say, here's what I'm going to do next year, people call me up in a year and say, okay, did you do it? Puts a little pressure on you. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But I like to teach. You know that. I really enjoy the teaching part of it. I just taught a class for $79, and so I don't charge a lot when I teach. I love to have people come and learn a lot and enjoy the day, and I'll continue to do that as long as I'm able. But the folks, you're right, the people that go around and are teaching 4 classes a week and that's all they do, they probably lost touch with what real investing is all about. But I'm a full-time landlord yet, and I enjoy that side of it. So I tend to do both as long as I can.
Well, that's interesting. I can vouch for your live training events. Jay Long is my education study buddy, so to speak, because John would offer okay, you can attend this live training seminar for a 3-day seminar, what have you, for this amount of money, and bring a partner or guest with you, tag along. And we would attack those things ourselves, and we would go on as a team or as a pair. And I can tell you, John, that both me and Jay we've attended one of your events. I can't remember the name of it, but 3 times, because we attended the first one and it just felt like we were trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant and running wide open. Did we get great stuff? Yes. But then we went back and very same course, and discovered how much stuff we missed in the first one. And then we said, if we did it twice, we need to do it again. So we did it a 3rd time. And so they're just awesome.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love to teach. There is a lot to learn. I've written a couple books. I've recorded 12 different courses. You can get on my website, johnschaub.com, and see those. But there's a lot to learn in this business, and that's what makes it exciting for me. And that's why I like to continue to learn and continue to teach. It's been a wonderful way to get to know a lot of people.
Okay, can you share a few of your favorite chapters in your book and expand on a little bit on each and why they need to get the book?
Yeah, the basics of the book is to buy steadily, not to be in a hurry. Not to go out and buy 30 houses in 1 year, but to buy 1 house a year, do a good job of it, finance it properly where you have cash flow from day one, and then get great tenants in there and just hold on to it forever. And so I cover most of that in the first 2 chapters. And then the 3rd chapter talks about real estate bubbles, crashes, and cycles. That's a new chapter, because after this last downturn, it was unlike most people had ever seen before. And I've been in several downturns, but this was the most exciting for me too. Fortunately, we were far enough down the road in our career that we didn't have much debt, so it didn't affect us much. But I saw a lot of other people have major problems with it. So I wanted to write a chapter to show people how to anticipate them, what to do during a downturn, how to survive a crash, and how to recognize bubbles. So that's in there. We do several chapters about creative financing and borrowing money without going to a bank, and using lease options and using investor money. And that's kind of the graduate class. A lot of people just buy houses, they go to the bank and borrow the money, and it works for them. As long as they have a good job and the bank doesn't cut them off, they can make that work. But if you want to go on and own more houses, you want to own a dozen, 2 dozen houses, or 3 dozen houses, you have to learn ways to buy without using bank financing, because the banks will cut you off at some point. So that section of the book, I think, is real important. And I'd say I'd wrap up with the management chapter, attracting and training long-term, low-maintenance tenants. That's really the key to long-term success. If your tenants drive you crazy, then you won't stay in this business. You have to be able to buy property and then manage it well, so that the tenants you attract are good tenants. They take care of the property. They respect you and the property. And if you can do that, then you don't get ulcers because of your tenants. And that's a very important part of it.
Yeah, and that it helps your bank account as well. Everybody's talking about, I'm going to say everybody, let's call it the media, that we're on the verge of another real estate bubble. Your opinion or comments on that?
I get a lot of questions about that, and I, it's really hard to predict the future, so I don't do it. But I am always prepared. And I will say this, if the prices in your town have doubled here in the last 5 or 6 years, then you should say, maybe something's going on, and this probably isn't going to happen again, and again and again. It's going to stop at some point. So avoiding personal liability on debt at the top of the market is a pretty important strategy. So people who are borrowing from banks, the people that got hurt last time had big bank loans, and then the property dropped in value 20 or 30 or 50%, and they got stuck with it. So borrowing from banks, it can be risky toward the top of the market. I'm not saying we're there yet, but certainly we're closer to the top than we are the bottom. It's moved a long way here in the last 5 years. So people should buy with caution. They should keep buying. They should look for opportunities, but they should study enough to learn how to avoid personal liability on this debt.
That's great. So I like what you said there. If you see that your sale prices or retail prices of properties in your town have doubled or more, and it's definitely a seller's market right now, even though we live in Mayberry, and I don't know if you call your town Sarasota, Florida, Mayberry or not, but the people that, in the big cities and all this and that, man, the spikes are just, the prices are spiking everywhere. And it seems like here's everybody wanting to jump on that real estate investing bandwagon again. And I see the pep rally shows and hotel mornings, free 2 tickets to this and that and all this and
Yep.
blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, blah.
That's a sign.
Yeah.
That's a sign.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't just stop buying because you don't know where the top is, but you buy wisely. And that, I just talk about lease options, and there's a section in the book on lease options. But you know, if you have an option to buy a house and it goes down, you don't have to buy it. So as you get toward the top of the market, you start thinking about ways to buy that don't expose your whole net worth to a downside market. So it's a hard lesson to learn if you go broke, and fortunately I've never gone broke. But you know, some people get where they owe a lot of money to a lender they can't work with, and during the down market, that's very tough. It's very tough.
That's great. I've got a place where they can go and get your book online. If you go to askmikebutler.com/John Schaub, just like the name spelled that you see there, that's redirected to the Amazon page, and you can get John's book in hard copy, or no, I'm sorry, paperback, and he's got it in the Kindle version, and you can see his other books there as well. But do you have another way for folks to get your book?
No, that's the best way. Amazon's the best way. Just they'll ship them to you right the next day. You'll have them soon. They are in the bookstores, I think, but I think Amazon prices are probably better.
Yeah, they're probably better. And that Kindle version, you can just download it to your smartphone and read it whenever you get a chance. So that's pretty good. A lot of people still stuck on paperback, but
well, you can underline it. You can go back and read it 3 or 4 times. You can fold the page over, and then you can carry the book around with you, which some people like to do. I've had a lot of folks show up in my office with a book they've read about 8 times, all marked up. And because if this is a new concept to you, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. Beth dog's running amok over there. Rudy the rooster. How about this, John? If not already covered, a big mistake or two that you see investors have made over the years that's consistent.
Well, buying too much too fast, probably. It's not that hard to buy real estate, but it's a lot more challenging to manage it well and to sell it sometimes, depending on what you bought. So people who just learn how to buy get all excited about buying. They go out and buy a number of properties in a year or so, and they're not good managers yet, and so they don't make much money because they never learn how to manage, or sometimes they buy something really cheap, and then they figure out why it was so cheap. They can't get rid of it. There's things that are hard to sell, too. So those things are probably the mistakes that I see a lot of beginners making, buying things that they just have a hard time managing or selling. And that's why I try to get people started in the house business. If you make a mistake, it won't be as big a mistake. It'll be a smaller mistake. It's not going to take you out of business, probably. But if you go out and buy a 10-unit apartment building and don't know how to manage it, that could take you down.
We had a local superstar who's dead, who's since passed on, but he used to tell us that it's no problem getting into a deal. The challenge is getting out of a deal.
There you go. Same thing. It's a lot harder. It's easier to buy than it is to sell in most markets. Now, markets change, but people might say, well, that's not true today. It's easy to sell today. Well, it's not easy to sell everything. It's just easy to sell something. And so make sure you buy something that you like, because you may own it for a long time.
Can you share with our listeners and investors on here about, and you've told me this many times over the years, but why single families versus apartments versus commercial versus shopping centers versus office buildings and all that? And it had to do something about who you're dealing with. You can always be an expert in one arena, but if you move over to those others, you're not.
Well, that's right. When I first started, I had a little bit of everything, and I was not good at managing any of those. And then when I started specializing in houses, I got to be a really good house manager. Learn to attract good tenants and train them and keep them in there for long periods of time and keep my maintenance costs down. So I'm really good at what I do in the house business. But if I switched and started managing a motel, I wouldn't be a pro over there. I'd have to learn a new game. So you don't want to think that you can pick up your skills out of one type of real estate and set it down in another type of real estate. Just because you know how to buy a house doesn't mean you know how to develop a piece of land. And a lot of folks think that real estate is real estate, and that's just simply not true. So specializing, I think, is a good thing. And then there are people, I have friends that own, several trailer parks. I have other folks that own apartments, and I know these people, and they do well, but they've specialized in those things. They've gotten really good at buying those types of properties and managing those type of properties. So if you're just starting, it just makes sense to me to buy something fairly small, not to go out and buy a big property that you don't know anything about. So By buying a house, you can develop the skills to manage and finance, and you'll learn a little bit more about it. And as time goes on, if you want to go into a different field, buy apartments or buy motels or commercial, you can do that. Everything makes money, but you'll learn that if you look around, especially at commercial buildings, you'll probably see some commercial buildings in your town that have been sitting empty for a year or two. Well, you've got to have some pretty deep pockets if you have an empty building for a year or two. And in the residential business, the house business, and a moderately priced house, you generally don't have them empty more than a couple of weeks, because if it's a decent house and in good shape, it'll rent pretty fast. So it's not just numbers. Sometimes people say just put one more zero on it. Well, that's not true. The different types of property require different kinds of management. And one major advantage we have in the house business is long-term loans. Most commercial loans are 5 years or less, which means you have to refinance them every 5 years. And if you don't have good credit in 5 years, or the property won't appraise in 5 years at a high enough price for you to refinance, you can lose that property because you can't refinance it in 5 years. So there's a lot of difference in these types of properties, and people that study a little bit will figure this out. Newcomers kind of think it's all real estate, and that's an oversimplification.
One thing that you told me years ago that stuck in my head, and I still remember it just real loud, almost like it's tattooed across my forehead. In a single-family house business, you told me that you can always be an expert, and because you're generally dealing with homeowners, and you know what you're dealing with, even burnout landlords. But when you move up to in being an expert in a single-family house arena, you can always buy it wholesale. And for the most part, if you wanted to sell that property, you can sell it at retail. And with more knowledge and expertise that you teach, you can do that without having to pay commissions and other things. So you can be an expert with single family houses. You can buy it wholesale. You can sell it retail if you want. And they're more liquid. And when you move to multifamily, commercial, and the others, well, in multifamily, if you wanted to sell it, well, who are you going to sell it to? Well, you're going to sell it to another investor who's looking for a what? They're looking for a great deal. And so you can't sell it for what you think it's worth. And when you get into the commercial stuff, you told me that no longer are you an expert. You're dealing with corporate attorneys who, if you're not careful, they can clean your clock. And I'll never forget that. And you had a buddy that had some kind of strip center, had some kind of building or something out front called an outlot, and this new one was selling, or it might have been vice versa, but somebody had some kind of retail outlet that sold something that competed with another tenant, and they stopped paying rent, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens. You have a lease that says that you have an exclusive right to sell a certain type of product in the commercial center, and they lease another store to somebody else that has the same product. They're in violation. So it's a lot more complicated. To kind of wrap it up, it's a lot more complicated. And as you point out, if you're buying $1 million building from somebody, they already own $1 million building. They may be smarter than you are. And, and if they're smarter and have done a lot more negotiation than you have, there's a good chance that you're not going to make the good deal on that. They're going to make a good deal. It won't be so good for you. Think about Donald Trump. Would you like to buy a building from Donald Trump? Who do you think is going to come out ahead on that deal? Probably not you. So, you're better off, as you point out, negotiating with people, buying from people, first of all, that want to sell something. They're not selling just for financial reasons. They're generally selling because they need to leave town, or they need a bigger house or a smaller house, or, there's a personal reason they need to get rid of something. And they're much more likely to make you a good deal than a businessman who's got a lot of experience, or a business person who's got a lot of experience. A lot of good reasons to buy houses, especially to start with. You can go on. You can get 10 or 20 houses paid for. Now, if you want to go out and buy something big, have at it. You'll be a lot smarter than you are today. So get some experience first.
Yes. And on a single-family house, treat it as a win-win, and you're solving a problem for your seller, and word of mouth is the best advertising that you can have. So don't go out there with an attitude of being a cutthroat, and because then you get negative. Everybody's talking about you in a bad way. So that's good stuff there, John. So we've already covered the biggest tip or two for investors, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. I'm looking forward to doing a great live training event with you again. But what else can you add that I didn't cover here?
Well, I think the next couple of years, of course, are going to be pretty interesting. We've got a big election coming up, and we'll have congressional elections coming up, and a lot of people will be nervous about what's going to happen. There are a lot of sellers I run across now who are already concerned about maybe their property's overpriced because it's gone up so much. People are getting concerned about values. It's going to be pretty challenging for the appraisers to stay on top of things as these numbers change as fast as they have. And so it's an interesting time in the real estate market. I always look at the ratio between the rents and the prices in my town, the houses I own and the houses I buy, and make sure they're not getting way out of line. If we have a lot of price increases, if a house doubles in value but the rent doesn't move, that's a little scary for a landlord standpoint, because you wake up one day and you're buying a house for maybe $200,000, it's only renting for $1,000 a month, and those numbers don't line up very well. Many places in the country have seen some pretty good moves in rents too. The rental market's strong and it's moved up. So in my town, the rental market and the prices have pretty much stayed in line, although prices today seem like they're moving a little faster than the rents are. We're going to reach up to kind of a top in the rental market. People can just pay so much rent. Working folks can't pay $5,000 a month. It's just not going to happen. But we've seen rents in this town for my houses move from $1,000 a month up to about $1,600 a month over the last 10 years, and that's a pretty good move. But I think the $1,600 a month is pushing people. As I rent houses, and I've rented 5 or 6 this year, I think, for about $1,650, $1,700 a month. But that's pushing people on their income side. They've got to make 40 or 50 grand a year to afford to buy that house. And the employment situation is pretty good right now. People are making pretty good money. But if we have a recession, a slowdown, I can see rents, softening up a little bit. So people who are depending on these high rents today need to be a little cautious, because, if we had a recession, they could soften up. If we have unemployment go up, our interest rates go up, the credit market tighten up, the rental market could soften up a little bit. So people buying today, counting on that top dollar rent to make payments, should build a little cushion in, just in case they have to drop the rent's $100 a month. But I'm not predicting any major changes in the market, but you just never know what's going to cause a downturn. The ones I've seen 4 pretty big ones, and they're all caused by something different. So I'm not sure what's going to cause the next one. I'm 100% sure we're going to have one, but I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be 2 years or 5 years. So just enjoy the good market while we have it. Continue to try to buy, but try to limit your liability, and learn all you can every day. Become a real student of real estate, and if you'll do that and you continue to learn and apply what you learn, you won't bat 1,000. You're going to still make some mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but they're not big mistakes. They're not mistakes that'll put you out of business.
Yeah. All right. If you got a question for John, can you take some questions, John?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Bill Taylor's got one, so I'm going to see if he can get his microphone unmuted. You there, Bill? He's got it muted, but he wrote in a question and says, "Boy, John has that right. Specializing is best. I have a small motel, had shopping centers and homes and apartments. Homes are the best." And Bill's up in Indiana. Is it working now, Bill? He can't.
Well, I agree with him.
Yeah.
People will tell you to diversify, but they're not thinking about real estate when they say that, because real estate, if you look at it, is more of a business than a passive investment. Managing houses is a sort of a business operation. Managing apartments, a business operation. And you have to, like any business, you have to have policies, and you have to have procedures, and you have to know what you're doing. You just can't make it up every time somebody calls you on the phone. And if you don't know the answer before they ask the question, you're in trouble. You just can't ad-lib this. You've got to know the answer when somebody says, I want to not pay rent this month, or I want new air conditioner, or whatever it is. You need to know what you're going to say.
Yeah, and also being in this arena, if you want to play the real estate game, residential rentals, you need to know the fair housing law inside and out. But you can really jackpot. I've seen a lot of folks jackpot themselves, because none of the gurus, except John, will encourage you to learn what the rules and the laws are about it. So
that's 101. It's real estate 101. Know the law. So get your landlord and tenant law and read it inside out. Get the federal non-discrimination laws. Read them. Know that stuff. And you don't need to violate any of those things to make a lot of money. And people tend to bend the rules, and you don't have to. You can play by the rules and make a lot of money, and if you do that, it's a lot more fun.
Cool. Bill, did you get your microphone working? You still hadn't. All right, we got Josh Biggio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right. All right, Josh, you there?
Yeah, it's Biggio, Mike.
Biggio, I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. Thanks for taking my question, and thanks, John, for joining us today. I'm a big fan and student of yours for many, many years.
Thank you.
I shot a message out here on the question board, and I was asking specifically, in your experience, looking back and surviving the Great Recession. I'm assuming you thrived the Great Recession. If you could time travel back to 2004, what would you have done differently or better, knowing that a crash was about to come?
Well, the things that cost me the most money in the last recession were loans I had made to other investors, and many of these guys weren't really investors. They were speculators. They were hoping to flip a property for a quick profit. And of course, when they borrow money from hard money lenders, and I'm a hard money lender, they pay us. I was only charging 12%. A lot of people were charging 14 to 16%. But they still couldn't pay me back because what they had was a house that had gone down in value, and they went down pretty fast in our town. So they weren't able to sell it and pay back the money they owed. So I ended up losing money on some of those loans. So to answer your question, I would not be lending money to people that toward what I thought was the top of the market, no matter what the interest rate was. You get suckered in sometimes by somebody saying, I'll pay you 16% interest, and that sounds like a great deal, because if you don't get paid back, it's not a great deal. The other thing we did wrong is we bought one house, but I only bought one. I bought one house right at the top of the market, and I paid $260 for it. We ended up selling it for $145 a couple of years later to show you how much our market dropped. It really dropped. But all the rest of the houses stayed full. I had about 80% of my tenants stayed in houses. We didn't have to adjust their rents. About 10% of my tenants, I did adjust their rent some, and then about 10% of the tenants just left. They couldn't find work. They left town. They went someplace else. So we had to re-rent those properties at lower prices. But today, the good news is, by staying in the business, coming out of the recession, we made some terrific buys, at the bottom of the market, or as it started up again. And now our rents are way up. So, the good news is, long term, everything's working out really well. But you're going to have these short-term downturns, and you should always be prepared. You should always have a little bit of money on the side. You should always have a little bit of credit on the side. You should never have any scary debt. And you should try, especially in times like today, you should try to get the best tenants you can get. If you have some marginal tenants, get rid of them. Get some better tenants, because when we have a downturn, the marginal tenants will flake out on you. So today is a great day to upgrade your tenants.
Yeah, Josh, I can vouch for John on me and Rue McFarland. We both got clobbered on hard money lending back when the recession bottomed out. And I never, one of the things is you think, well, do you want to own this after 2 years or something? Man, we were getting keys thrown back through the door and took a bath on that stuff. Got back a bunch of houses that we didn't want to take back in a short period of time. So
that is interesting, because with the lack of deals out there, we're starting to do some lending, but we're very picky. We're only lending on houses that we wouldn't mind owning as a long-term rental if things were to go south. Do you think that changes that risk equation?
Absolutely.
It does. It does, yeah. The ones I got burned on is where people started fixing them up or doing some remodeling and didn't quite get done. So if the house is already in good shape, it's already a rental, so you're lending to investors, not to speculators, then you're in pretty good shape. You just don't want one back where they took the kitchen out and forgot to put it back in.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's one thing I'd like to add, Josh and John. And, when I do loans as a hard money lender, you look at the property and see if the property qualifies, and your LTV is going to be whatever you feel safest at. But we always ask ourselves, do you want to own this if they stop making payments? The other big factor that we were aware of, but didn't realize it would all hit at the same time, is that they might file bankruptcy. And if they file bankruptcy, boy, you're left holding a bag for it can be a number of years on that. So if you're borrowing money to loan money, that could be dangerous.
Well, there's a rule for you: never borrow money to loan money. Never, never, ever. I learned that one a long time ago. But if I haven't told you that one, write that one down.
Yeah,
That's a good rule.
That's a good one. Okay.
It is. That's where you really get in trouble, is when you borrow from if somebody else, at 10%, loan it to somebody else at 16%, and the world ends. You're done.
Yeah, gosh, and you're laughing about it. Okay, we got Bill Taylor says, I don't know what happened to our microphone. Time to keep your powder dry there is going to be a great time to buy. I wish he could talk. Bill's up in Indiana. He can't get his microphone.
Yeah, well, I agree with him. I'm still buying. I've got one house I'm trying to buy right now. It's been empty for, it's been on the market for almost 2 years, and it's overpriced by about $100,000. It's a little more expensive house, but, it's a house that I already own several houses in the neighborhood, so I know the neighborhood well. I know the rental market well. I know the house well, and I'll probably end up with it, but just you have to be patient. So it's a time to be patient buying, and don't, where you get in trouble is in a hot market, you tend to pay retail for stuff. You don't want to pay retail. You have to wait for the right deal to come along. And they don't come along that often in a market like this. But there's still a lot of overpriced properties, and eventually those houses will sell for the right price because they won't sell them even in a hot market when they're way high.
Okay. I got a question for you here while we got a couple other folks that are banging them in right now, John. But for most people that I see, their real estate investing is going to be their pension. It's going to be a supplement to another retirement plan that they have. And that's what folks are looking for. Now, years ago, you encouraged me, and I did it. And thank goodness I did. But can you share with them a short, 90-second elevator pitch on the Roth IRAs, the self-directed ones?
Yeah, it's good to have different accounts that you invest in, and one of them certainly, if you could qualify for a Roth IRA, which means you don't have too much earned income, but you have some, it's a separate account that you invest in. And I have both a qualified plan and a Roth IRA, and the qualified plan is another type of pension plan that is not as good as a Roth, because in the qualified plan, I can earn money tax-free while I'm investing, but when I take it out, it's taxable. In the Roth, of course, when you take the money out, it's not taxable. So it's somebody who knows how to invest, who can get a Roth started and put a few $1,000s in there and then buy something small and work their way up, could end up with, a significant amount of money in that Roth at some point. And all the money and all the profits come out tax-free. It's really the best thing I've ever seen as an investor. And I still explain it to people, and they say, it can't be that. It's just too good to be true. And I'm talking about attorneys and people who should know about these things. And it is true. But the challenge in investing in Roths is buying something that makes you money. So the first step is to learn how to make money in the real estate business. Learn how to put together deals, how to manage money, how to manage properties. And once you do that, then you can use a Roth and make profits that most people don't even imagine. Because most people think, well, if I put money in a Roth and put it in the bank, you're only making 1% a year. Well, that's true. But if you invest in real estate, you know how to make 20 or 30% a year. You can do very well in a Roth over a period of 20 or 30 years. So terrific investment vehicles, especially for your kids. But I started one 10 years ago. All my kids have them. My wife has one. We all have Roth IRAs. And it's a safe place to keep money. I tell the kids, look at it like another savings account until you figure out what to do with it. But, put money in it every year, have a savings account. It's got some creditor protection because it's a retirement plan, and it pays no taxes. It's as good as it gets. So if you don't have a Roth IRA, after you set down the phone today, go out and start one. It's well worth the investment.
Cool. Okay. And I guess, let's see, that kind of wraps that up. I really don't see any other questions coming in. If you got a question for John, get it in right now. We're getting ready to wrap this thing up. So to get John's book, Building Wealth One House at a Time, the second edition, you can go to Amazon and punch in John Schaub and it'll pop up. Or you can go to my website at askmikebutler.com/John Schaub. Either way, we'll direct you right to the Amazon page. You can get the paper book version and you can get the Kindle version, and that's $1 cheaper. So final words of wisdom from the Pope, John Schaub, and we'll call this one a day.
Well, I just tell you, Mike, it's been a wonderful business for me, both the real estate business and the speaking business, where I've got to meet so many nice guys like you or people like you over the years. So I don't regret a day of it. I have made mistakes in the business, and I've learned from them, and I try to, I explain the mistakes I've made to other people as I teach and write. So find somebody who you like, who you can relate to, who's really been in the business, who will tell you both the good side and the bad side of it, so you learn Learn from their mistakes. Anybody says they've never made a mistake is not a real person. So to learn from people who have made mistakes, who will explain them to you and explain how they're not going to do it again. Learn from your mistakes. Don't keep making the same mistake over and over again. And you'll have a lot of fun in this business. It's a great business. You help a lot of people, and you make a lot of money. Not getting better than that.
Awesome. All right, John, you have a great day down there in Sarasota, and I'll see you guys soon on the next one. Go out there and make an offer. And to your continued success, adios, Mike Butler.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
All right.